Good evening, my brothers and sisters in Christ. This is Hana Hudson with Hana Hudson Ministry YouTube channel. And right now, I would like to wish you all have a wonderful and joyful Merry Christmas, as the season of Christmas is approaching tomorrow. 2 more days in America. So, but right now at this video, I have a special presentation for you, brothers and sisters, because we are going to talk about the story in the stars. So this is the name of this the show, The Story in the Stars, or in Indonesian, Cerita di Dalam Bintang. So I will not speak Indonesian right now because it's going to be a little bit a long video, but I'm planning to put it caption in Indonesian language later on. But right now, without further ado, I would like to welcome my special guest tonight, and he is my brother in Christ, and his name is Mason. So, Brother Mason, welcome to Hana Hudson Ministry channel.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you
And
for
yes,
your ministry.
please introduce yourself. Hold on, let me put you on the screen. Okay.
Well, my name is Mazen. I live here in Augusta, and been working here with a group of Christians from the Arab community, and we have a little Bible study that is actually what inspired me to look into the topic for today. And in preparation for it, I learned a lot of things from the research, some things on YouTube, some historical facts I was able to gather and put together, and kind of enlightened me to something I never thought about and never knew. And I realized maybe a lot of people are in the same situation as me, and we have missed possibly God demonstrating his plan of redemption in the stars all along throughout all generations. And we are not aware of that. And I think there's a lot of reasons we are not aware of that. Part of it is a lot of information was lost, maybe through history. A lot of wisdom has gone away. Satan has also been playing in hiding the truth from us, and there's also physical limitations that hinder our comprehension of what God is doing in creation around us. So I'd like to talk about all of that in today's video and session, and hopefully share some things I learned with your guests and your viewers that will make them appreciate God even more.
Okay, wonderful. So let's start with this one question. Okay, is it okay?
Yes, please.
Here, as in okay, sorry. Here, as Indonesian people and Christian, and went to Bible college. Many times I heard in our church, every time we talk about zodiac, horoscope, and yeah, anything pertaining about future, by looking at signs in the sky, they said as a Christian we are not allowed to do that. So what do you think about this? Maybe this would be a good question of
Yes.
basic foundation for us to bring this subject, because people might think, hey Hannah, why do you see the sign? Why are you talking about zodiac and horoscope? Because basically we're going to talk about this, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Uh, you are absolutely right. God does warn us to stay away from um, the worship of stars, looking to the star to gain uh, divination, or looking to the stars to gain insight about our own lives. The 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 area where Satan has come into this topic is he took what God has created and he distorted it. And he, in the pagan religions, people started looking at the stars so that they can find answers about their life, fortune telling about their lives. And so the focus of those people who look at the stars is to find answers for their life and to gain knowledge so they can manipulate things around them. However, the way God designed the stars, however, is supposed to be signs for us, is to proclaim something to us. And the topic of that proclamation isn't us, rather it is the revelation of God himself and what God is going to do in redeeming mankind. And so that message has been distorted, and mankind has flipped it and has taken the stars to utilize it to gain maybe uh, I guess wisdom from demonic powers to apply it to ourselves, if I could say that, or knowledge from demonic powers to apply it to ourselves. This is something that is forbidden in the Bible and we should stay away from for sure. However, the original message in the zodiacs that we will talk about could actually be very different, and in fact is consistent with the Bible and actually is proclamation of God's gospel to mankind, written in his creation. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about different passages that that seem to hint at that in the Bible.
So yeah, why don't we start and jump in?
Okay.
So where do we
Yes.
start?
Let me share my screen. All right. So this topic I was asked to talk about in our Arabic Bible study, and the original topic was presented to me by one of our members who asked me, Mazen, can you talk about the scientific explanation of the Star of Bethlehem? So when I was doing research on that, that became the focus of the talk. And then it expanded to a bigger topic to help understand how the constellations fit into that picture as well. So let me make sure. So there, okay, perfect. Okay. Are you able to see the shared screen?
Yes.
Okay, I don't see anymore, but that's fine. So the story in the stars is the topic of my presentation, and we're going to talk about what the stars communicated to our ancestors and how we've lost that knowledge over time. All right, so I want to read a passage from Matthew 2, 1 through 12. This is a well-known passage about the Magi that came looking for Jesus. And if you'd like to read it real quick to refresh our viewers' memory, it's a short section.
Matthew 2. Wise men from the east. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. So they said to him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, but you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for the young child. And when you have found him, bring back word to me, that I may come and worship him also. When they heard the king, they departed, and behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them, till it came and stood over the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Then, being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed for their own country another way.
Whenever I read this passage, and it's a very popular passage and it's well known, especially read during Christmas time, it always left me with a lot of questions. You have questions about the star, and then you have questions about the characters in that passage, in that story. So the questions I had about the star is, how can a person follow a star? And what kind of star is it, right? How did the Magi follow the star as it traveled through the sky? Number one. Number two, how and what kind of star is it? Is it a comet? Is it a meteor? Is it something else? Number two is, what was special about that star? How did the Magi recognize this is something unique? And three, the thing that they recognized was very interesting. They recognized a king was born. How did they do that? What about the star indicated a king was born? And how did they know that they have to travel all the way to Israel to see that king? And then lastly is, how can these Magi's approach a king already enthroned in Israel and ask that king, where is the king of the Jews? I mean, I come from a Middle Eastern background, and if a individual went up to the leading leader and asked them, where is the leader of that nation, that would be very insulting. In fact, in history, you would be killed if you went up to the king and asked him, where is the king? And in this case, this is actually well known about Herod. Herod, who the Magi approached and asked, where is the king that was born? Where is the child that was born, the king of the Jews? If you know historically what Herod has done, you would be amazed that these Magi would have so much courage, so much boldness to ask that. Herod historically has killed his children and his wife and their families, so that because he was afraid they will try to overthrow him. And so, in fact, Caesar mentions about Herod that it's better to be his pig rather than to be his son, because he was so paranoid that he would kill even his children to maintain power. This is the same guy that the Magi approached and asked, where is the king? And so that to me was very baffling. That means there's something in the background that this passage doesn't fully explain, but from the background, from what's happening, I can tell that both Herod and the Magi knew had knowledge of a king that's going to be born, and they were accepting of that fact, and and the Magi came to look for the king to worship him, but Herod was disturbed. The Bible says he was disturbed, and all of Israel was disturbed. And so why was that? And and the Magi, when they came, they said, we saw his star in the east. And so it's as though Herod was expecting that star to arise, but he wasn't watching for it. And so he doesn't question them. He doesn't ask much about the star. He was almost accepting of that fact. And his response was, "Oh, tell me when you saw the star so I can go and worship this child." But he was only asking that question to gather information so that he can find that child. Because it says in the later passages that Herod killed all the children 2 years and under, because that's when he found out the star first appeared from the Magi and when they told him. And so there's something unique about this story. Both Herod knew something and the Magi knew something, and both were accepting that that message was revealed in the skies, in the stars. So these are the questions that come to me when I read this passage. Like, how can this be? What is that knowledge that was available to them that we may not fully know just from reading this passage? So we had questions about the star. We have questions about the Magi. Who are these Magi? A lot of people believe they came from the east, and most likely from Babylon or Persia, and came across to us. And the other questions is, why did God use a star? We see in the other stories of the birth of Jesus, he used angels to make announcements to the shepherds. And he used dreams and visions to make an announcement to Joseph. But in this case, with the Magi, he used a star. And from what we can gather, these Magi are likely not Jews. They're Gentiles, and they're coming to worship the King of the Jews. And so this passage leaves us with a lot of questions, and we hopefully want to dive in and gather enough information. And I think the information we'll discuss today will explain a lot of these questions in the story. So now I don't have a lot of background in astronomy, but I want to lay out an argument for your viewers, and hopefully it is convincing and will leave you more in awe with our Lord and our God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is. Can you see this, Hannah? Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, yes.
So what I have here is what's called a stela. A stela is a block of stone, and on it is a carving. And you can see it's a carving of a lion. And around it, now, of course, some things are highlighted with the different colors here with the red, blue, and yellow. But they are highlighted there to help you see that there are stars all over this lion. What's unique about this is it's an artifact. It's an artifact found on a mountaintop in Turkey, and the name of the mountain, it's Mount Nimrut. Okay. What's unique about this site is that it was an observatory. Okay, an observatory is a place where people will go to look at the stars. And this site was commissioned by a king. His name was King Antiochus. I'm not sure if it's the same one as King Antiochus Epiphanes, but it is probably one of his descendants who commissioned this observatory to be built and he manned this place with people to look at the stars 24/7. Okay, and they would work in shifts. And in this place, there's heads of many gods as well. And it was in this place that they found this stela. Okay, and this was built approximately 50 years. They date this stela to approximately 50 years before the birth of Jesus. Okay, so as I go through this lecture, I'm going to come back to this stela, and at the end, you would be amazed at why it's there, why they even have it there. And again, this is before the birth of Christ, built by a king, a leader who is, for all intents and purposes, not even Christian, and he was looking in the skies for something, and this artifact was in that place where they were looking in the skies for signs. All right. I want to go to the Bible and I want to reveal to you what the Bible says about God's relationship to the stars. It's a verse that says, "The heavens declare the glory of God." Miss Hannah, what do you interpret from that when you hear that? The heavens declare the glory of God.
Well, it declare something that human cannot do, human cannot comprehend, something that away from human's hand is only supernaturally done by the higher being.
Okay.
So that's
Right.
what we call it glory.
The glory of God. The heavens are, like you said, they're untouchable.
Yeah.
They're vast and seems like it goes on for eternity. In it, there are powers in planets that are forming, that are exploding, that are emitting their heat and energy. And it's just an amazing place. And it is amazing how you can look in the heavens and see distant planets and stars and all the marvelous things that they're doing. So, yes, the heavens declare the glory of God. But in this lecture, you also see, I'm going to hopefully show you another aspect of that. It's not just the beauty and power of God that's revealed in the heavens. It says also, the stars proclaim the work of his hands. The stars proclaim. It's as though they are preaching something about the works of his hands. This is a picture of our planet from space. This is the Hubble telescope. It's a telescope that is in outer space, and it helps us see distant planets and stars. It's put in outer space because it is away from our atmosphere and from the light pollution that exists in our atmosphere. So going into outer space, it's a clearer picture of distant stars and planets. And here's some of the images it has captured over time. You can see these are distant galaxies. Now, each one of these dots could be a galaxy, and there's billions and billions of stars in each galaxy, hundreds of billions of stars in a galaxy. So each dot is hundreds of billions, and there's hundreds of billions of galaxies that we have observed so far. And there could be much more that we are unable to observe because we don't have the technology to do so. And Miss Hannah, have you ever been? I don't know how the sky looks from Indonesia, but in America, when we live in these cities, we have a hard time seeing the stars in the sky. When we look up, we might see only a few stars. But if you ever sat in a dark place on a mountaintop or in the forest or in a desert, and you looked at the skies or on an island away from the big lights of the city, you would be amazed at the number of stars that exist. I don't know if you ever were put in that situation, or if Indonesia has that different islands where you can go and see the stars clearly. This is why God told Abraham in Genesis 26, "I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky." a lot of stars. And this is how a sky should look like. But a lot of times we can't see that because of the light pollution. Genesis 1:14 says that God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs." And I'm going to come back to this word, and for seasons, and for days and years. So there's a purpose to stars, and the purpose is for mankind to know signs, seasons, days, and years. So it is for something, a sign. And the word for sign in this case stands for appointment, or moed in Hebrew. That maw'ed is also in Arabic. That word means an appointment. And the same word is used for the feasts, the 7 feasts talked about in Leviticus 23. So it says the stars are for a sign, or for a to help keep an appointment that God has made. And so man can know that appointment has occurred. And it's for seasons. So we know based off how far the earth is from the sun, whether, it's going to be winter or summer, and it brings about seasons, and for days and years. And so it helps us also tell time. Man, when he looks into the sky, he looks for patterns. That's kind of how God created us. We always look for patterns. And the same thing when we look at the stars in the sky, we look for patterns, we look for things that recur, we look for shapes, we look for things to make sense of it. And so a lot of things are always recognizable. In fact, the Bible expects us to recognize some things about the stars. I'll give you an example. In Amos chapter 5, verse 8, it says, "He who made the Pleiades and Orion, who turns midnight into dawn and darkens day into night, who calls for the waters of the sea and pours them out over the face of the land, the Lord is his name." So in this passage, Amos mentions certain constellations that exist in our skies. He names 2 of them, Pleiades and Orion. In this picture, you're seeing Pleiades. It's a group of 7 stars that are grouped together, and they are very bright. And most people can see this without any telescopes or any advanced devices.
Can I interrupt a little bit?
Yes.
Yes. So basically, this is the original language and word from the Septuagint, right? This is not like some kind of like a new translation that, they decided to come up with this word, right?
No, yeah, this
It's
there's a different in the
text.
Hebrew, there's a word, but it seems to be uniformly recognized that this is what God was talking about. And the reason why, so Pleiades is part of Taurus, that's why I have that here, the Taurus constellation, and we're going to come back to that. Because Orion is mentioned also in that passage. And Orion is recognized very well by this group of 3 stars that exist right here. Are you able to see that?
Mm-hmm.
Those 3 stars are Orion's belt. And this is known across all different cultures, throughout all of history. I mean, here's the evidence of that. Job, which is one of the oldest books in the Bible, mentions Orion. And it says, "Can you bind the chains of Pleiades? Can you loosen Orion's belt?" And so God, when he was speaking to Job, he was mentioning even part of a constellation that was well known throughout his time. And so he mentions Orion's belt. And he says, "Can you loosen it?" Of course not. He cannot loosen it because he cannot even approach it. And this is something they see regularly in their skies. and it's well known, so that when he talks to Job, he speaks about it as though Job already knows about it, and it's a common knowledge. And so here's the question to our viewers, and this is a question I ask myself. Can you recognize Orion if you look at this of your night? If you look at the night sky, are you able to pick it out from the stars? I didn't know how to do that, but it is mentioned in our Bible, and it's mentioned in our oldest book, and therefore, even today, people know. If you study the constellations, you would know which one's Orion. If you do astronomy, you would be able to recognize that feature of Orion's belt that's mentioned in Job. So what this has told me is, number one, the names of the stars have persisted throughout history.
Okay.
Okay. Number two, it tells me that even our ancient ancestors and ancient forefathers were very knowledgeable about these things. This is something that didn't evolve over time. So that when Orion is mentioned or when Pleiades is mentioned, it is recognizable to the reader of Job and even Job himself. And God is using the names of constellations with Job. Okay? And says, can you bring forth the constellations in their season? Or lead out the bear with its cubs? The bear and the cubs are other constellations that exist in our skies. And if you know how they look like, you can see them and look for them. So this is a picture of a man gazing at what the sky should look like. This is part of the Milky Way that you're seeing here. In Isaiah 40, verse 26, it says, lift up your eyes and look to the heavens. So God is encouraging us to do that, right? Lift up your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these? He who brings out the starry host one by one and calls forth each of them by name, because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing. When I read this passage, I see, number one, God is encouraging us to look to the stars. Okay? He's not forbidding us. Okay? But he makes us look to them so we can recognize who God is. We look to them to know God's power. But there's something else. It says God brings out the starry host one by one. That means each individual star that's there is purposely called out. And he calls forth each of them by name. These billions and billions of stars God has already named. He knows them intimately. And he has names for them. And if he has names for them, then we should probably also know the names that he has assigned to them. And I'm not sure where that knowledge is. However, it seems like God has already named them, and there's many names we probably don't even know what they are. But the ones that we do know, I think it started encouraging me to study them and try to see what is God telling us and why he names each star a certain way. But God is intimately knowledgeable with the stars. He names them and he brings them so that not even one is missing. This is great attention to detail on God's part. They are purpose. He's putting these stars in the sky purposely, and he knows each one intimately. Psalms 147 also reiterates the same concept, but it also adds even more. Let's look at this psalm and look at it really closely. Psalms 147 says, praise the Lord. How good it is to sing praises to our God. How pleasant and fitting to praise him. The Lord builds up Jerusalem. He gathers the exiles of Israel. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. And watch this. He determines the number of the stars and calls them each by name. Great is our God, our Lord, and mighty in power. His understanding has no limit. The Lord sustains the humble, but casts the wicked to the ground. This is an interesting passage. The reason why is verse 4 is sandwiched between God's dealing with man And it says he builds Jerusalem. He gathers the exiles. Okay, he cares for man. He has a purpose in Jerusalem. He heals the brokenhearted. And then he says this: he determines the number of stars and calls them each by name. And then he goes back to talking about his power and his understanding that has no limits, and how he sustains the humble with that power and understanding. Okay, that part of the stars sandwiched between God's dealing with man, I feel like it's important because it's saying God is there for the brokenhearted. He's there for those who are wounded. He's there to sustain the humble. He will punish the wicked. But that is seems like also that the stars that he calls by name has a part of that, is part of that description of who God is. And so I feel like this passage is talking about how the stars are proclaiming these aspects of God. Another picture of our Milky Way galaxy, the number of stars that you would see in a clear sky. It's amazing. Numbers 24:17 says something unique about the stars, and it relates it to Jesus. It says, I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob, a scepter shall rise out of Israel. Again, it describes Christ coming as a star coming out of Jacob. Now, Joel and Luke also tell us to watch for signs before the return of the Lord. Joel says the sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And then Luke says, this is Jesus speaking, and there will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations in perplexity, at the roaring of the sea and the waves. Men faint with fear and with foreboding of what is coming on the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. So both Joel and Luke mention that there's going to be signs in the heavens preceding the return of our Lord. And this last passage also is very important because I'm going to come back to this one, and I want you to kind of pay attention to the language it uses. Psalms 19, 1 through 6, it says, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them. Yet their voice goes out into all the earth, and their words to the ends of the world. In the heavens, God has pitched a tent for the sun. It is like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, like a champion rejoicing to run his course. It rises on one end of the heavens and makes its circuit to the other. Nothing is deprived of its warmth. Miss Hannah, look at these verses that it's using, or these words that are using. It's a lot of verbs that are used when it's as though something is communicating to you, right? The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his handiwork. They pour forth speech. They reveal knowledge. Their voice goes out, right? And their words to the ends of the ends of the world. What words? What's the voice that's speaking? It says it has no speech, no sound is heard from them, but it's saying something. It's communicating something. So the question is, what is it communicating? This is a path of the sun in different parts of the year, and you can see it's running its course in a circular fashion. Now, we read how the skies declare the glory of God, right? The heavens declare the glory of God. Hebrews 1:3 says that the glory of God is Jesus, right? And so if we are going to backtrack track and back apply this verse, then the heavens should be declaring Jesus. If both the heavens declare the glory of God and the glory of God is Jesus, then the heavens should be declaring Jesus. And so this is the perspective I'm bringing, and this is what some other people have shared, that will help us see that indeed the heavens are declaring Jesus. And this is what we're going to be exploring today. There's another galaxy. All right. So one thing we have to know, maybe not everybody knows this, in our skies, there are 12 major constellations. Okay, 12 major constellations. And they are kind of going across our heavens almost like a slideshow. Okay. And each month, one comes into focus a little bit more than other ones. And as the month goes, another one comes and proceeds and follows it. Okay. And so every month, every season, we see different aspects of different parts of the sky. And each time we see a constellation that usually appears in a certain time frame. Now, a lot of people, like you said, are scared. This is talking about zodiac and horoscopes. But what the horoscopes are is Satan's distortion of man's understanding of his plan that is written in the sky, that is revealed in the sky. And so Satan has convinced people to start looking at zodiac so they can say, oh, this is your future, this is your destiny, this is what's going to speak about you. And it's not actually, and it takes the focus away from God and puts it on man. God, again, we talked about this in the beginning of your show. God warns us about that in Deuteronomy chapter 4. He says, take heed lest you lift your eyes to the heavens, and when you see the sun and the moon and the stars, all the hosts of heaven, you feel driven to worship them and serve them, which the Lord your God has given to all the peoples under the whole heavens as a heritage. So the stars are supposed to be a heritage, not to be worshipped. Jeremiah also clearly warns us. And they shall spread them before the sun. He's talking about people who worship the sun, who look to the heavens and do divination. He says they will be killed and spread before the sun and the moon and all the hosts of heavens, whom they have loved and whom they have served, and after whom they have walked, and whom they have sought, and which they have worshipped. So, Ms. Hannah, we need to look at different, I'm going to use different words so that, and then we're going to try to bring them together. So constellations, these are groupings of stars that are recognizable. They form a recognizable pattern in the sky. Okay. And this is there's 12 main constellations in our skies, and we see different ones in different months of the year. And in addition to those constellations, there are smaller constellations that are surrounding it. And the smaller ones are called decans in English. I'm not sure what it is in Indonesian, but they're called decans. And each constellation has 3 decans. So there's a total of like 48 constellations that are recognizable in the sky. And each constellation has 3 associated with it. I'll show you examples of that. So astronomy is a science of studying space and celestial bodies. Okay, this will help us be inspired in God's creation and in awe of His creation, and it points us back to God as the creator of heaven and earth. Astrology has the opposite effect. It causes us to look at God's creation for guidance rather than the creator, and God tells us do not do that. So yes, as Christians, we need to stay away from the practice of looking at constellations as horoscopes, as something that's supposed to tell us our future. We should know, but it does not tell us not to look at the constellations because God put them there on purpose, and He has named them, and He is trying to communicate through them something to us. All right. So the constellations, again, are groupings of stars that are recognizable in the sky. And here's a picture of all the different constellations that surround us, and the 12 constellations that surround uh, uh, our skies that we can recognize in different times of the year. So most of the time we start with Virgo. Virgo is in the front of the screen here, and it goes to the right. Virgo to Libra, Scorpius, Sagittarius, and then what is this one? Capricornus, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, then Leo. Okay, these are the 12. Now, when you look at these groupings of stars, they look like a bunch of stars, and people have connected lines to them, and it's hard to make what each one is, right? It's not very clear. However, there are, and these constellations run around in what's called the ecliptic around the Earth, and that's where we get the word zodiac. Zodiac means the path, the way. Okay, which, if you think about it closely, that's the name of Christianity when it first began, the way. Here's another rendition of the ecliptic with the different constellations. Now, here's the interesting part, Ms. Hannah. Each constellation has a image associated to it. It's not very clear when you look at these stars what that image is, but there are images associated to each of these constellations. And this is what I find unique. These images are uniform in all different cultures and different traditions. If you look at the sky, this is the order in which they come. Virgo, Libra, Scorpion, so forth, and then all the way to Leo. And these are the 12 that show up. Now, if you go and explore the different ancient cultures, you would see these zodiac symbols and the imagery associated to each constellation is uniform. So here is an artifact from Dendera. This is in Egypt, in one of their museums. And in it, you can see the different zodiacs. For example, this is Leo, the constellation Leo, represented by the lion. This is the bull, the Taurus, constellation Taurus. If you keep on looking, there's different ones as well. That one's a little bit hard to see, but here's a different rendition of it as well. And so here's the two fish representing the constellation Pisces, and so forth. And so this is in ancient Egypt. This is these artifacts are about 4,000 years old, 4,000 to 5,000 years old. That means 2,000 years before Jesus' birth. You find the same thing in Persia. Now, the Persians were known to be astronomers, astrologers. The Zoroastrian tradition has a lot of stargazing in it, has a lot of knowledge and wisdom and tracking of stars embedded in their culture. And again, you have the same zodiac symbols across. Here's Scorpius, or it could be Scorpius or Cancer. Here's Pisces. Here's Taurus. Here's Gemini, and so forth. And so here's Aries. And you have the same thing in the Persian zodiac.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So each country's, does the picture always like same? They're not changing.
Yes.
So
that's what I'm trying to convey. Yes, all the pictures are the same. So you have these stars that are like kind of, when you look at them, like, okay, like It looks like a bunch of stars grouped together. They form a pattern. Okay, we recognize it. It comes around every year. However, the imagery and the stories associated to it, or okay, the imagery and therefore maybe a story behind it, is the same across all cultures. And this is the fascinating part. And this is ancient, going back ancient times. And here's the zodiac for the Chinese, the same thing, just like the Egyptian, just like the Persian. And so, and this is an ancient, again, an ancient record. The Chinese were known to be very well documenters of stars in the sky. So that a lot of astronomers will actually go to Chinese records to see when certain phenomenons happened, and they can date certain events by those phenomena. And here's our modern zodiac, the same thing. So something has, the constellations have persisted through all of history, as well as the images associated to the different constellations, the things that we are calling the zodiacs. So what explains that? What explains how all these different cultures, when they look at the sky, they have the same image behind it? And there's an interesting writing of Josephus that I don't know where it came from, but can explain why all these different cultures have the same traditions and the same imagery associated with different constellations. Josephus writes that Seth, the son of Adam, was the one who taught his children about the wisdom from the stars. This is what he writes. He says, they were the inventors of that particular sort of wisdom, which is concerned with the heavenly bodies and their order. And he's talking about the inventors of that wisdom was Seth, and he taught it to his children. So there is a possible explanation of why all these different cultures, when they look at the sky, they see the same images. And when you look at an image, there's usually a story behind it. Okay? There's an explanation of why it's there and what it's supposed to mean. And so when we look at the different zodiacs, we're going to find, hey, it is speaking something. And I would like to go through that. So the images of the zodiacs is found in a synagogue, an ancient synagogue in Israel. So somebody will say, why is that there? And it's the same images. Right? Yeah. Capricornus, Scorpio, Libra, Virgo, Leo, Cancer, Gemini, so forth. The same exact zodiac images.
So where is the starting point?
Most people start with Virgo.
Virgo, and then to the right or to the left?
And it's going to the left in this case.
Okay. Just like
Virgo, Libra, and so forth, going all the way back to Leo.
Just like Hebrew, Arab, they always like go to the left, right?
Yeah, because I think that's how it from our rotation of our orbit. I think it's coming through the left,
To the left.
going to the right.
Interesting.
So here's an ancient church in France, and on the stained glass windows, it has Pisces. So why would it have a symbol of the zodiac in a church? So today, a lot of people associate zodiacs with horoscopes, but it seems like it wasn't always that way. This is an evolution that occurred from, I think, satanic corruption, because the word for zodiac in the Greek means to continually move in a circular motion. Another way of saying it, the zodiac is the path, and so is God explaining something about the path of redemption through the zodiac? That is the question. So this is showing our solar system. You can see that the sun is in the middle. Here's planet Earth on the right. Of course, we have these big planets such as Jupiter further out. I'm showing this because it's going to be important in a minute. And then what you see in the background are the galaxies and further stars. Now, from the perspective from Earth, when you look out, you will see the planets around us. You will sometimes see Venus and Mars. You might see Mercury, and you'll definitely see Jupiter. Jupiter is one of the brightest planets you'll see because it's so big. You see that in our skies, and these planets will move around in our sky frame. And the sky frame has distant stars which seem to be more fixed from the Earth's perspective. So you have fixed stars in the background. You have the constellations that change because the point of view of the Earth changes every month. Okay, and so the constellations are somewhat fixed. It's just the Earth's perspective keeps on changing. And then you have the planets of our solar system coming through that fixed background picture of the constellation. And so here you have the progression of the different constellations every month, right? You see these four coming across, and I'm going to go into details in each one of them, and then it continues and continues and continues every month until you get to Leo, and then it repeats back to Virgo, and then continues again. Okay? So, are these images trying to communicate something to us? An image and a painting is a form of communication, especially in the ancient days. We don't have any writings of Seth. We don't have any writings that go back all the way to the beginning of man. And writing may have not been invented at that time. And so what was passed down was oral traditions, images maybe applied to the stars and communicated to the children as this is what this is saying, this is what this constellation is saying, and so forth. So that is the hypothesis. That's the argument I am trying to make. So let's look at the zodiac and its potential meanings. All right, Miss Hannah. The first one is Virgo. Okay. And the Greek word for it implies version. And this constellation of Virgo, all the cultures have her holding a branch. And so if we know how would you relate this to the Bible, Miss Hannah? Okay, sorry, can't hear you.
It reminds me actually like Passover.
Passover? Okay, why Passover?
Because it's a time when it's a springtime, right? You're talking about how would you identify this picture, right?
Yeah, so if you see this constellation and everybody tells you this is Virgo, this is the version, and she's carrying a branch, does this tell you something that you know about in the Bible?
Yeah, that's why I said
Yeah.
it reminds me actually the Passover season, Passover time, or the branches, because it's also reminding me Jesus because he's the branches of Judah. It's from
Yes, exactly. So a version, and she's holding a branch, and it says, Jesus was born of a virgin, right?
yeah.
And Jesus is called the branch of Jesse. A branch will come out of Jesse.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you look at that, that constellation is as though it's trying to communicate that the Messiah is going to come out of a virgin.
Yeah. So woman
Okay.
pregnant and then giving birth into a branch of from Jesse.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. All right. So this is the only female sign in the original group of 12 constellations. Okay. The next one that follows Virgo is Libra. Okay, and Libra is represented by the scales.
Oh,
Okay.
interruption. So question. So these pictures every month, it's like fixed. It's going to go to rotation Or they change it
Correct.
every year?
No, they go through the same rotation.
Okay.
And they come up the same time roughly the same time every year.
Okay.
Okay.
So the
And so,
constellation, by seeing that constellation, we will know whether it's Libra, whether it's Virgo.
correct.
And
So
then the
you will
picture
see
is
the you will
always like that.
yeah, you will see these stars, right?
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Forming
but
a
then
certain line.
yeah, you see these stars, but then there's a image already applied to it that's been
Yeah.
passed down throughout all of history.
Yes, yes.
And
Exactly.
so we're looking at the images and what it may be communicating to us. And so Libra is the scales. And the names of certain stars are very unique. Some of the stars are called like the price of redemption.
Mm.
What is the price of redemption? So these stars that make up Libra, they have these names that are like the price of the cost of redemption or the price of redemption and things like that. And so if you understand these names and you look at Libra, it says those trying to communicate that redemption has a cost. And we are found, kind of like what Daniel says, um, we are found wanting when we are put on the scales of God, right? We've fallen short of his glory. And um, and there's a price that has to be paid for redemption. So that's what that symbol of the scales is communicating. And when you look at scales, that's how a lot of people think about salvation. If you talk to a lot of non-believers, how will you get to heaven? They say, "Oh, I hope my good outweighs my bad."
You know
Right?
what I'm thinking also about it? It's a judgment.
It's judgment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
We're gonna If we are trying to win heaven with our goods, we're gonna fall short. And so God is communicating here that there's a price that needs to be paid for our redemption. Okay. All right. The next one is Scorpio. Okay. And this constellation is represented by the scorpion. All right. What does a scorpion? I mean, again, this is a Middle Eastern, I guess, view. What does a scorpion mean in, I guess, most cultures?
It's stinging. It
Stinging, right? Stinging. It
stings.
means in the desert, if you get stung by a scorpion, you could potentially die.
Mm-hmm.
So it means death. It means
Mm.
like an enemy. Okay, like death, stinging, something that harms. If you look at the sky around Scorpio, again, remember how I told you each constellation has different decans or
Mm-hmm.
different constellations associated with it. And if you look at the different decans around it, you have this. You have a constellation called Ophiuchus. Okay, and that is a man holding a snake, a serpent. He's
Mm.
wrestling with a snake. Okay, so this imagery, what is it telling you? What kind of story would you gather from these images applied to these constellations?
For me, it's like a spiritual warfare.
Yes, a spiritual warfare between a man and Satan,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And what's underneath that man's feet?
It's a scorpion.
Scorpion.
I have given you authority to trample on snake and scorpions.
There you
That
go. Yes.
represent it
Okay.
represent devil, right?
Yes,
Enemy.
exactly. Now think about it a different way. There's a verse in Genesis that talks about the seed of a woman, the seed of the virgin, right?
Mm-hmm.
The seed of the virgin is going to come to pay the cost
Alden Mason, that
of
woman, it
death.
seems like that woman represent Israel, you think? Also, the woman?
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
Israel and the virgin birth.
Wow. Now I'm getting
Okay,
exciting seeing sky.
yeah. Now watch this. Watch this. So in Genesis, it talks about the seed of the woman, right? The seed of the virgin,
Mm-hmm.
right? He doesn't say the seed of the man. The seed of the woman will crush Satan's head, but Satan will bruise his heel. You see where the feet of this constellation is? It's over the head of the scorpion. and the other foot is close to the stinging part of this. The heel of the man is close to the stinging part of the scorpion.
Are you talking the right? I mean, like, are you talking about the left?
The left foot is
Uh-huh.
over the head of the scorpion,
Okay, the stinging part.
and the tail of the scorpion is close to the heel of the man.
Okay, I see.
So there's a verse in Genesis that says that the seed of the woman will crush Satan's head, right? But Satan will sting him in the heel.
I see.
And this constellation and the imagery behind it seems to represent that verse very, very well. Now, you mentioned that this looks like a struggle between a certain man and Satan, right? That's a very interesting observation, because another constellation associated with it, one other decans, is this. Okay, this is Genesis that I was referring to. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Okay, that's what I was referring to. But the other decans associated with this, Hannah, is a crown. And it looks like the serpent and this man figure are fighting for that crown. That's the glory of God. It could be representing the glory of God. And or this man is to be glorified, or this man is to become king eventually. Right? But Satan is trying to prevent that man from being king. And he's wrestling with man. And you can see that in the temptations of Jesus, right? Satan went to Jesus and says, I will give you the kingdoms of the world as long as you bow down and worship me. Okay, he was going to make him a servant under the illusion of being king.
Yeah.
But when in reality, God was going to give him the kingdoms as an inheritance, because he is king, and God will raise him up to be king.
Also, this is interesting because it reminds me when Peter tried to prevent Jesus to be crucified, and then he said, no, Jesus, I will not let it happen to you. And Jesus rebuked Peter, get away behind me, Satan, because you only think what the man think, not what God think. So that's probably part of this thing. I wonder if that night, when that night happened, is actually like
that
in the sky, in the sky, showing up this constellation.
Yes. All right, let's continue. Sagittarius. This constellation, the image behind it is a image of a man, half horse, and the man is holding a bow and arrow, and this man is aiming at the arrow at the scorpion. Okay, and so this two-natured image, some people have said it reminds them of the two natures of the Messiah, both God and man. And he is the one who's come like a hero to destroy death or Satan. Okay, so this talks about the two natures of Jesus. Following Sagittarius is Capricorn. Capricorn is represented also as a two-natured image, and it's a ram or a goat that's kneeling as though it's going to be sacrificed, and then the back part is a tail of a fish. Okay, and this speaks to Christ's both being a sacrificial lamb, and the resurrection that will follow from dead.
How do you define it? Like from where? From the tail or from the...
So, well, I think, I don't know where they got that explanation. So there's some questions of where these explanations have come from, but they seem to be connected to these images. Like how, if somebody was to communicate to you that the Messiah is going to be both suffering and he's going to rise from the dead, he's going to die and rise from the dead, how can you communicate that in an image that is understood across all different cultures? And in this case, I think what it's saying in this case is that the lamb or goat, that's a common animal sacrificed across different cultures. And so there's the image of sacrifice, and then there is the image of a fish that I guess comes out of the water. In our baptism, we come out of the water. And so I think that's how they may be relating it to the resurrection. But that seems to be the common connection that they have with this image. There are some, I will add some additional details. I don't have that. There are smaller stars in that may also bring about that interpretation of this image. And I'll look that up and I can post it with this video. And okay, so going back, this constellation, Mrs. Hannah, also comes up during the time of Easter and Passover.
Oh, so it's
So
always
that's,
the pattern, always like consistent
yes.
every
So
month.
yes. So this comes up, this constellation and this image shows up over the time when Passover and Easter comes about. So that's another connection to death and resurrection. All right. Following that is Aquarius. Aquarius is represented as a man pouring out water. And then there's a fish underneath that water. And this is kind of reminding us when Jesus says, I am the living water. Whoever drinks of me shall never thirst. So the fish as though is looking for life, and this man is providing it in the water by providing it water. The fish is like thirsty for water; it needs water to live, and this man is providing it for the fish.
So represent of people. Yeah.
So it represents Christ being the living waters.
Yeah. I
For
mean,
us.
the fish represent the people.
Yes, the fish represents people, and this man is providing it life. And this is what John 4:14 says. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. Aquarius comes up in the middle of summer in the Middle East. It's going to be hot and deadly. And so water, a sign that shows water is coming and provided by this man, is refreshing in a sense, but it's also saying, hey, there's life that can be found, especially if you're in a place where water is scarce. And it's a reminder that there would be one who would bring them living water. The next one is Pisces. It's represented by two fish that are bound together. The unique thing about this this constellation is there's a star that comes and it breaks that bondage that's there. So it's like Pisces represents freedom from through Christ, because Christ is described as the morning star that comes and breaks that. The next one is Aries, and that's represented by a ram. I think that's kind of also associated with the Feast of Passover as well. This is again Pleiades, and that's part of Taurus. Taurus is represented by the bull, and the bull is a symbol of judgment. And so there's saying there's a judgment coming. Then there's a image of two figures, and it's called Gemini. And the figures are commonly represented as having both a instrument of war and instrument of peace, like the harp, and then the other one has club and a bow. And so this can represent Christ's two comings, one in peace and one for judgment and for war. After that, there's a constellation called Cancer, and it's represented by a crab. And a crab is filled with hard shells, and so it's protected. And so it's almost saying that there's a protection that's found in this figure that's going to come to destroy death, and this figure that came twice in two different comings. And then the last constellation is a lion.
Lion of Judah.
Yeah, Lion of Judah. This constellation is called Leo, and there's amazing things associated with it. So Leo has, again, three other decans, three other constellations associated with it. This constellation is over another constellation that's representing a snake.
Question, hold on. So in one season, the constellation does not always come one constellation, but also come with other constellation together as a group?
As a group, correct.
Oh, okay.
So the main constellation is Leo, and the other groups associated with it are these. And they come into, so Leo stays there maybe for a couple of months, but it's really prominent a certain month. But then there's other ones also come along with it. Okay.
Do they always come together with this, or later on come and then this bird show up and then this pot show up and the snake or come together at the same time?
I do not know the answer to that.
Okay.
I would have to do more research. But they're always associated with Leo. Okay. So that means either they come at the same time, or as Leo's there, they may come and fade away, come and fade away, come and fade away. But there's always they come as a group at a certain time of the year. And so Leo is associated with a snake, a bowl that's being poured out, and a raven or a bird of prey coming and attacking the snake. So this right here, to me, is an image of what Christ will do at the end when he conquers Satan. Christ being like you said, the Lion of Judah. And this is another study that I think we need to go into, is how the constellations are associated with the different tribes. There's a passage in Genesis where Jacob blesses each tribe, and there seems to be some connection to the constellations with each blessing. And so Judah is always represented as a lion. Jesus is called the Lion of Judah. And the lion is attacking the snake, pouring out its wrath from this bowl, and calling the vultures to come and eat the flesh of the snake. And these are imagery that really makes me think of Revelation at the end of the age, when Christ conquers Satan and destroys his enemies.
The judgment as well.
And judgment, yeah, and all his enemies.
And governmental
reign. So these are the 12 constellations that show up, and each one you could connect it to Jesus and the gospel. All right. With this knowledge, if you go back and look at different passages in the Bible, you'll be amazed. You would be like, oh, wow, I now see this passage in a completely different way. So, for example, Revelation chapter 12, verse 1 through 5. Would you like to read that here?
Sure.
This is Hannah.
The woman and the dragon. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns of its head. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and plunged them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. She gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter.
All right. This is in Revelation. This is Revelation chapter 12. Who wrote Revelation?
John,
John. Where was John when he wrote this?
in hold on, in the island of
Correct. Patmos.
Patmos.
Yes, yes, good.
Thank you.
He was on the island of Patmos. And so the island of Patmos is in the middle of the ocean. If you go to any island small enough in ancient time, you're not going to see anything other than the stars at night. Okay? And so John says, a great sign appeared in heaven. The word for sign used in the Greek there is zodiacos, where we get the word zodiac.
So for the word
Okay?
sign,
The word sign in this passage, because this passage is written in Greek, the word sign is zodiacos, where we get the word for zodiac. So a great zodiac appeared in heaven. And what is it? It's a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, stars over her head, and right beside her, a what? A dragon. The woman is pregnant, the dragon appears, and he flings the stars down from heaven, right? So when we read this in Revelation, we have a lot of imagery and we have a lot of interpretations, right? I think that the common interpretation and the common understanding is talking about the nation of Israel producing forth the Messiah, and the dragon is Satan trying to destroy the male child, correct? And that we see that biblically, right? We see that with Herod, right? Satan used Herod to try to kill Jesus in that passage we read in the beginning, right? And so we see that Satan has always tried to kill off Jesus, that male child, because he doesn't want him to become king. He did that also with in the kind of Moses' time. He raised Hammond in Persian time to destroy the Israelites, all to prevent the rise of the king. And in Jesus' time, Satan used Herod, just like this passage is talking about, when Jesus came forth from the nation of Israel. Satan used Herod to try to kill the child. However, this also describes the constellation Virgo in certain times of the year, or sorry, it would describe the Virgin Virgo with the constellations nearby it. So let me show you. So here's Virgo. Here's the stars of Virgo. Right? Here's Virgo. Now, if you put the sun and the moon, you start getting that description. And you know what's beside Virgo? the Draconoid meteor ring. So there's an area where we have a lot of meteors coming through. Meteors are big rocks that fly through the sky and they look like they're shooting stars. This is called the Draconoid meteor shower. Okay? And right beside it is a constellation of a dragon. So when John was looking at the sky, what was he seeing? He was seeing Virgo, the constellation Virgo. He was seeing the dragon. He was seeing the sun coming into Virgo, and the moon being at the feet of Virgo, and right behind them or around them is a meteor shower, and he describes that sign in Revelation. Does that make sense, Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go back to the original question. We started. What is that star of Bethlehem that the Magi were following? Okay. So could it be a comet? No, comets just show up in the sky as a flash. The Magi were following the star for a while, it looks like, because when they saw the star, they followed it. And by the time they reached Herod and by the time they found the child, it was close to almost 2 years. That's why Herod killed the child. So there's something about this constellation that made it persist. So the star wasn't moving very fast. What made them think something unique happened? Well, if what we can do is, because we know Kepler and we know his laws of planetary motion, we can plug mathematical models into computer and trace back the stars in ancient times and see where they're located. And we see something very amazing if we go back to around 3 and 2 BC. So something happened at that time. Something called a conjunction happened. Number one. Okay, sorry, before that, something happened. It was this that happened. Okay. This happened in about 3 BC. There was the sun kind of came over where Virgo normally is. The moon is at the feet. The dragon and the meteor shower. That's what's described in Revelation. That happened in 3 BC. And then another phenomenon happened. That what happened there is rare in itself. Another phenomenon happened where Jupiter started forming a conjunction with another planet called Regulus. Regulus is the king planet. It is part of the constellation of Leo. Jupiter is the brightest star that we have in our skies, the brightest planet. So what happened is Jupiter came into Leo. So the king planet came into Leo. It went over Regulus, so that the two planets together combined, the lights became very bright that you couldn't tell them apart.
Hold
And
on.
so
When you say combine, is that mean like they're in a line?
no, so here's Regulus and here's Jupiter, and they came close to each other, so your eyes couldn't differentiate it's two different planets, and both together they started showing the light brighter. So it became, you have the brightest planet overlying a king star, and together they became very bright and very noticeable. And this happened in the constellation of Leo, which is represented by an image of a lion, which is an image of a king. And so you have the king constellation with a king planet and a king star all overlapping. And this happened only once in history, and it's happened in 3 BC. So it is possible those who are monitoring the skies are seeing this happen. And they see the brightest star, the brightest planet going over a king star, a star whose name is King, in the constellation of Leo. And so if the Magi saw this, it may have communicated something to them that, hold on, a king planet, king star in the constellation represented by a king or lion of Judah, the Messiah may have been born in Israel. And so they start following Jupiter as Jupiter is moving. Okay? Because remember, the constellations are somewhat fixed in the sky. The Earth is turning or orbiting. And so each one lasts a good almost month or so. But when they see Jupiter there, they start following Jupiter as it overlaps with Regulus. And as it goes on, you get this phenomenon. Let me try to show you. So here's Leo, here's Regulus, and here's Jupiter. So Jupiter goes over Regulus.
I just saw white screen conjunction in Leo. No picture.
Oh, you're not seeing anything? Okay. You're not seeing this video?
I just see conjunction in Leo.
Okay, let me see.
Retrograde motion. And
Let me see if I can
video press.
Okay, 1 second. There you go. All right, you able to see that?
Okay, now lion.
That's Leo.
Okay.
This is Regulus. Okay, let me make sure starting from the beginning.
So that's Regulus, the bright light.
Okay, wait, 1 second. Okay. So here you have Leo, the constellation Leo, right? Regulus is right here. Jupiter is moving into the frame of reference. And Jupiter comes very close to Regulus where you cannot differentiate the two stars.
Okay.
And then Jupiter, because of the orbit of Jupiter, it starts what's called retrograde motion. It goes forward and then it comes back to Regulus. If you watch it, it goes over Regulus and then it goes away from the star, right? From Regulus. Venus comes into play, then Mercury, these are orbiting, and then they are now going back because the orbits are different. Our orbit is different than their orbit. Well, Jupiter will eventually backtrack.
So, who is this, that bright light thing that just come following?
So, this is showing you how things looked like in the past.
Okay.
I think Jupiter is it's supposed to flip around. Okay. Let me go back to the beginning because I think that's what it is. All right. So here's Jupiter. And Jupiter goes over Regulus, becoming the brightest star in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I think they see it, right? And they follow it.
Okay.
Then Jupiter goes into something called retrograde motion, where it starts going back towards that area. See?
Oh.
And that's because of our orbit has changed. And then it goes back. So if you read the story very closely, they see the star, right?
Uh-huh.
They follow it. The Magi follow the star, and then they get to Jerusalem and they say, "Where is the king?" And he's like, he's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, oh, we saw his star. Like, oh, okay. Then he calls the wise men or the teachers of the law and says, where is the king supposed to be born? And they say in Bethlehem. So the Magi then start proceeding towards Bethlehem. And then they see the star again. That's probably when Jupiter comes back in retrograde, and he leads them from from uh from
Bethlehem.
Jerusalem
Yeah.
to Bethlehem. And they said when they saw the star again, they were rejoicing because they saw it again. So I think it disappeared, and that moment it disappeared is probably when Jupiter and Regulus split. And then when Jupiter came back into the constellation of Leo over Regulus, they saw it again and they were excited, and that led them to Bethlehem to find the child. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So let's sure. All right. Let me make sure. All right. So we're going back. I'm going to go back to this image that we talked about before. You able to see it? Santa?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Sorry.
All right. So when you look at this image again, oh, it's not, for some reason, it's not coming up. Are you able to see the image here?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we go back to this, remember I talked about this stella and how it was found in an observatory, looking by in an area where people were looking at the stars all the time. And this existed before the birth of Jesus, almost maybe 50 years. And in it, you see the constellation of Leo and stars around it. It was possible that they were looking for this. Now, where did the Magi come from? A lot of people think they came from Babylon. If we read Daniel, Daniel was in Babylon, and Daniel was placed with the astrologers, the wise men, and so it is possible he had gave them information and prophecy and knowledge on what to look for in the stars, and so they recognized when it happened, and then they followed it. Another interesting thing, Mrs. Hannah, is that the event that we talked about where Jupiter and Regulus overlapped in the constellation of Leo occurred on the 1st of Tishri. And if you are familiar with the feasts, the 1st of Tishri is the Feast of Trumpets. And traditionally, the Jewish nation would announce a new king on the Feast of Trumpets. So the models indicate that this rare event where Jupiter, Regulus, and Leo all overlapped, it all overlapped on the time of the rise of the king. And Jesus being the king in Jerusalem. And this happened on the Feast of Trumpets. Now, this to me has convinced me that what these ideas about the zodiac is true. And it's the passage that comes from Romans chapter 10. If you want to switch to that, look to that real quick.
What verse?
13 through 20.
13. Like Romans 10,
Romans 10, 13 through 20.
13, 20. For whoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Israel rejects the gospel. How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the gospel of peace, who bring glad tidings of good things. But they
Miss
have,
Hannah,
yes,
so what is it talking about there?
about the Jesus.
Okay, Jesus, in verse 14 it says, how can anyone preach unless they are sent? It is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. What it's referring to who?
About Jesus, about gospel.
The gospel brought forth by missionaries, by those proclaiming the good news, prophets, etc. Right?
Mhm.
Okay. Now, if you continue,
Okay. But they have not all obeyed the gospel. For Isaiah says, Lord, who has believed our report? So then faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. But I say, have they not heard? Yes, indeed, their sound has gone out to all the earth, and their words to the ends of the world. But I say, did Israel not know? First, Moses says, I will provoke you to jealousy by those who are not a nation. I will move you to anger by a foolish nation. But Isaiah is very bold and says, I was found by those who did not seek me. I was made manifest to those who did not ask for me. But to Israel, he says, all
okay.
day long I have stretched out my hands to a disobedient and
Thank,
contrary people.
thank you, Miss Hannah. If you follow the arguments being made here by Paul in Romans, this is part of a chapter where Paul says, my heart goes out to the people of Israel. I want them to be saved. And he says that God will eventually bring about their salvation, right? But the argument here he's making is saying that that the gospel has been going out by people bringing in the good news, and how God has blessed their feet. But then he says the Israelites have not believed, and he says, did they not believe because they have not heard? And his answer to that, it's a rhetorical question, but the answer to that is very interesting, Miss Hannah. He's saying here that they did not listen to the gospel, but it was preached to them by who? And he quotes Psalms 19, which we read earlier. He quotes David when he was referring to the constellations and the stars. He says, their voice has gone out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world.
Wow. The
He's
constellation.
quoting David when he's talking about the stars.
Mm-hmm.
And so Paul was saying here, the stars have been preaching to the nation of Israel throughout the whole generations. Even if nobody came to them, the stars was conveying the information to them. And then when we read that story in Matthew chapter 2, we see indeed a pagan nation, a Gentile nation,
the Magi,
the Magi's recognized the birth of the king of Israel, came to worship him, and the Jews had no clue. Herod is a Jew. He didn't know what's going on. The leaders of the law didn't know what was going on, even though the stars had been preaching to them. And this is the argument of Paul. And so that means the stars had a message. The stars were communicating something. And so this makes me believe that the Christian understanding of the imagery was intended by God all along in the constellations. And it was speaking to mankind consistently across all the universe, all civilizations. And that's why he says that the nature and the heavens declare the glory of God, and it also declares
Wow.
the Godhead and the gospel. And so even if nobody spoke the gospel, the stars themselves have been preaching it all along.
Yeah.
And the people's understanding of the stars have been should have understood it. And this is what Paul's argument is that the Israelites have no excuse. The stars have been preaching,
Yeah.
and their voice has gone throughout the whole world. So this convinced me that indeed there's a message in the stars, and there's a story in the stars that was communicated, but we over time have lost that understanding, and it's good to rediscover that.
Yeah, and also this is really, really true because if you look at the Bible reader, most of the Bible, not reader, the Bible writer, they speak the same language is about Jesus. Perhaps, perhaps they might, see this the constellation to know God's time and season, because in Moses' time, and then we see also in Abraham time, Joseph time, they all and David time. This is all talking about the typology. This is speaking of the typology of Jesus. And we really think about, now it makes sense because every year the constellations stay the same. So whoever people that God inspired, whoever generation that time that understood this thing, they might speaking in their own language, but again, the same message is about this Messiah. Isn't it interesting?
Right. Yeah.
It's amazing.
So hopefully this really inspired me. I wanted to get a telescope now and
Yeah.
start exploring the sky and exploring what's out there. There is an app that I downloaded. It's called Sky Tonight, and it's a very cool app. You can put it at different parts of the sky, and even though you may not see the stars, it tells you what's there, because sometimes we can't see it because the lights around us. But it tells you what's there, and every time you look, you're like, wow, you're amazed at the creation of God, and it'll give you an understanding of where to find different constellations in different times of the year. So it's helpful. Again, that app is called Sky Tonight. It's free on the App Store.
So this is amazing. So again, for us as a Christian now, just to assure, our viewers that it is okay to. Are you still there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my screen is out here. That it is okay for Christian to study about the constellation, this constellation. Is it? Am I correct?
Correct.
The layout of each constellation and the pictures to identify it, and that it is okay for us to look in the sky, see what we can see, but not to find answer about our life, but to see what sign God has about his time and season for him. So instead of like on the horoscope side, people looking for the stars and try to identify it to themselves, right? This is how the pagan way, non-Christian way, see the horoscope, the zodiac, and what else? The other one, yeah, the horoscope and the zodiac, because they want to identify it for themselves. Oh, what is my personality? Oh, what is my maybe about myself? It's all about myself. But actually, if we, from your study, from the Bible, that you mentioned to us, it's actually for us to see. I think it reminds me about think for the things above, right?
Right.
So now, if we want to see things in the sky, we want to know, what season it is, is actually not to know about ourselves, but actually
Right.
for us to know His will, His plan, His
Exactly.
agenda, His time and
Right.
season, for us to know about Him, not to know about us. So the focus is supposed to be not us, it's the focus is to bring us back about Him. Am I correct? Am I
That's absolutely correct. Yes.
okay?
The stars were never meant for us to gain
I see.
guidance from them.
I
It
see.
was meant to declare to us the Son of God, Jesus, who's going to come from a virgin, who's going to redeem us, pay the price of our penalty, uh, who's going to deliver us from death through his death and resurrection. He's going to be the hero who's going to be overcoming death. He's coming back in judgment, and he is the Son of God, and there's no other one. So the stars have been proclaiming Jesus all along,
Yes.
and any attempt to give different definitions to the stars or make it about us is stealing the glory of God, stealing the glory from Jesus. And I think that's why God says, don't do that. The
Yeah.
stars are a heritage to you. They are declaring my greatness and my glory.
Yeah.
And it's that glory is the Lord Jesus Christ.
Okay, I really understand it now. Now it make me really, really wants to study about the stars,
Yeah.
and because I want to know what God's agenda at this season. So, by the way, where do we find these stars? Where can we really actually see them from our bare eyes
Uh,
to be
you
able
can
to see the
see,
constellation, picture?
I can see, well, it's hard to see if you're in a city. So if you have a lot of light around you, it's gonna be challenging. You may see like Jupiter, you may see Orion's belt, the Pleiades. There's some certain features of the sky you can see because the stars are not that far away. They're maybe 400 light years away. But some stars and the constellations are further out, and you will need to be in a very dark place, like in a desert or in an island with no light pollution. And so you can see a lot of these. And I think in the ancient times, there wasn't a lot of light pollution, so it was much more visible during
Yeah,
that time.
yeah.
But yeah, you can see them with a naked eye. I don't think you need a telescope to see a lot of these constellations. You can see them with the naked eye, but you have to be in the right place to do it.
Oh, okay. Does this constellation actually visible to every country at the same time? Different.
No, uh, they're not all visible at the same time for every country because it all depends on I believe it depends on the location you are because some parts have hold on. There's a I have to look at. I don't know the answer to that. There's certain models that will tell you the tilt of the Earth, and it gives you different. Uh, no, I think you're right. I think the constellations are visible to everybody on the face of the Earth depending on the tilt of the Earth, and so different parts of the sky is visible depending on the season.
Okay. So
So I'll have to do some research about that. I
because
still am gathering information about astronomy and how things work.
yeah,
To
but for sure, whatever sign that the Bible talking about, it must be visible from the Middle Eastern part,
right,
right? Especially from Jerusalem, all of those continents.
right.
Well, anything else, Brother Mason, that you want
Um,
to share? That,
I just hope everybody appreciates God even more and the beauty of the things they put around us. A lot of times we see things on earth, but even in the heavens, there's a beautiful uh, array of his display of his power and the message he's been communicating to us all along. And
yeah.
so I do think that is God's way of affirming that this is his creation and it's proclaiming the most glorious thing he's going to offer us, and that's Jesus through the stars and the stories that have followed and the imagery that have followed. And I think there's a common origin from what I've researched it seems that there's a common origin just because everything is so uniform across different cultures and over time. And then how Paul says, yes, these stars have been preaching to us all along. And so there has to be a background story that we need to rediscover
Yeah.
in what God has created around us that reflect back to Him.
Wow. This is so awesome. This is a great knowledge. So thank you so much, Brother Mason.
Welcome. Thank
And
you for everything.
yeah, we wish you all Merry Christmas and Happy
Merry
New Year. We are
Christmas.
waiting for you to have our New Year's party.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So God bless you, brothers and sisters. So are you done with your sharing of the? Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much, my brothers and sisters. From wherever you are watching right now, we are so grateful because tonight we learned a lot of things. I myself, as he keep talking and preaching, I make a lot of notes here. Wow, I have these like wow factors tonight because now it gives me such a hunger and thirsty. I'm gonna read about this. I'm gonna read about this, and something also what the take out from this story is how God is really, really faithful and true that to His word. The most wide opening is the last one that he mentioned about. It's that what do you call it? The gospel has been preached all along for many years, but the Israelites haven't really pay attention to it, and perhaps they've been twisted in Babylon because it seems like during the Solomon, during David, everything kind of like go well. They're waiting for the Messiah because David received a lot of like revelation and prophecy about Messiah, but then something missing when they are in Babylon, right? So they're now into this paganism. So now instead of like they listening to who God, they studying about who God is, it seems like the revelation is being blurred out. And then they come back to Jerusalem, and then they brought all this and pagan religion, and it really like closed their eyes from having revelation, right? See, this must be something to do with the Babylonian culture that influenced the people of God. That now God has to reveal it to the outside of the house, to reveal it to the Gentiles. Because, and now I see again the bulls, and then the what do you call it, the
Scales.
the scale. It reminds now I begin to have revelation about whatever I see the sign when Brother Mason is talking about. Oh, I know that. Oh, I know that. It seems like things coming into my brain. God reveals something because now I get to identify it. Oh, that's talking about that scale must be talking about justice, God's justice, and then that bull must be talking about not just justice. I'm not talking about just the bull, but I do believe, Brother Mason, that God also revealed new revelation with the same constellation, right? With the same woman, or maybe with the same constellation of the scale or bulls, and speaking, reveal something to us about Him, right? Because it seems like the pattern what we see. Every writers, have different word, different language, but speaking the same thing. The justice of God, the judgment of God. So, wow! Now I need to have revelation from God. The scale is justice, and the bull is the judgment. Now I understand why God spoke earlier through you said about when He talked about the giving birth. I mean, like hold on, the Messiah came, right? But he's talking about defending the weak one, defending the humble one.
Yeah.
Why is that? He's speaking something, right? It's judgment too. Have you ever thinking judgment from the other perspective? Because right now he's talking, he judges people too. When he come to this earth, he's also judging his people, the Israelite. Hey guys, I'm coming to you now. But look at, this Magi coming to me and reveal, and you don't know.
Right.
The king Herod don't even know and don't even read it, even though he's Babylonian. The pagan, and they understand about this, but they
Yeah.
don't get it, right?
Right. It
It's
seems
Jewish.
like this is why I was showing you the Stela of the Lion. That was from Turkey. So there was a king looking for the star of King Jesus, even before the Magi's. And so it seems like there was an anticipation of the coming of the king, and people were looking to the stars to see the announcement of it.
Yes.
And so the interesting thing is all these different cultures from Turkey to Babylon were looking for it, and the ones who weren't looking for it are the ones in Israel where the king was actually born. And
Yes.
so they missed it. And this is kind of
Yes.
what that passage in Romans is saying is
Yes.
the stars were telling them. And
Yes.
and yeah, so there's a mystery there that I think now we have the written word, we have the clear description of what happened and the truth about Jesus. We don't have to look in the stars in a vague way to
Yeah.
understand it, but when we read the word and we look to the stars, we see that the stars were reflecting God's word all along.
Wow. Is there any app we can see actually the constellation?
Yeah, so the app that I was telling you about, it's called Sky Tonight. And let me see if I can show you an example on if it shows up.
That's accurate, whatever that
It
day.
seems it seems pretty accurate.
Okay.
So
Star.
let me kind of turn some lights off. All right. So if you focus this at different parts of the sky, let me make sure. It shows you the different constellations are there. Now, certain constellations have been added over time. So some of them look like modern instrumentation, you know. But some the old constellations, the ancient ones that are recognized. So you just kind of aim this at different parts of the sky, and it will tell you, okay, so here's like a serpent. I'm trying to figure out how to do it backward.
Wow, that servant. Do you think that's servant?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure.
Like snake. It looks like snake.
Hey, oh, okay. So there's
Oh
another one.
wow. That's
So there's
amazing.
different constellation. Oh, there's Pisces.
Oh my goodness.
So what my phone is aimed up over my left shoulder. Uh, Through the wall is showing you where Pisces would be. So if I would go outside, I would aim this in that part of the sky, and hopefully we'll see some of the stars that make up Pisces. So yeah, this app is
The name of it, Star.
the name of it is Star Tonight.
Star Tonight. Okay.
Okay, and you can get that for free on the App Store. And there's other apps I'm sure that do the same kind of thing. And so yeah, you can get that, and then you can look at the sky, and you'll be amazed what's out there. And then it helps you then recognize different features in the star and
Yeah.
in the sky. And there's always a story that it's saying, and I think you can make up your own story and pass it on to your children.
Yeah.
But that seems to be what has happened. In that, I think Josephus is right. Seth probably did communicate something about God's plan for redemption to his children and grandchildren and so forth, and then from there it spread to the entire world. That's why so many people have share the same imagery and stories behind each constellation. So
Yes. Wow. This is really new learning, new studying, but exciting because I never really see stars in the most exciting way, guys.
Right, right.
And this is so awesome. So
Yeah,
because there's two more feasts, they are still coming. No, three more feasts. We are waiting. Three more feasts. The feast of the Lord, right? God's calendar. So
yeah,
perhaps we should, looking at what God is speaking. No, God,
yeah.
to anticipate our heart.
I would be curious to see if the same signs that occurred 2,000 years ago are going to repeat.
Yeah.
And if they are going to repeat in our day and age or close time in a close time frame. It's just speculation, but it could be, another
No,
sign of God.
but God never speculate, right? Because
Yes, God.
he's faithful.
Yeah,
There's a reason he has that system for us to follow. We don't have to worry.
right.
So we just like that's why God said we should be waiting because he's going to
Yeah.
come.
He
So
did. He does say that there's going to be signs in heavens before his return, and
yes.
so there definitely is going to be something we need to be able to see and recognize. Yes, this is happening before God's return.
And
Jesus'
another
return.
yeah, and another thing, what the take out from this, it anticipate me if I see the constellation and then I want to see the current world situation,
Hmm.
and then we can like what call it connected it,
Yeah, is there correlation?
especially pertaining with the Israelite,
Yeah,
because there's a sign up there for what God is doing on this earth in the
yeah,
natural. So to be in alignment, so we have to be in alignment with God's plan.
right.
So praise God. Thank you so much again, brothers and sisters who are been faithful, following us and listen to us. So we're going to continue for another story. Do you have another Bible study that you want to teach us? I'm expecting you're going to teach us more about the. We're going to speak English. Will be faster. About the Gog and Magog and what's going on. With the
Yeah, since we did that video, a lot has happened
yes.
that seems to be aligning that that war that's gonna the Bible predicts will happen. And if you look at what's happening in Syria
Yeah.
and in that surrounding region and what has happened since October 7th, we talked about how that prophecy talks about Israel coming back from war, feeling that it's safe.
But I think you should
And
save it. Save it. Don't let it. Yeah.
so, yeah, there's a lot of geopolitical events that have occurred that
Yes.
seem to align exactly how the Bible predicts it's going to happen. And this war, I anticipate it actually maybe in the near future. I mean, we're talking about maybe weeks, and it's going to shake that region very powerfully.
Yes.
But I think it's going to do it for the glory of God.
Yeah.
There's something that says in that passage, in that chapters of Ezekiel, that this happens so that the nations will know that He's the Lord. So
Yes.
hopefully, this will open up the opportunities for witnessing, for sharing the gospel with people who wouldn't hear. It will defeat, the enemy will be hit hard, um, and that it will silence, in my perspective, a lot of the falsehood and false religions in that region will be silenced, and that God will start declaring Himself more and more evidently, and will cause people to say, "Wow, is that the Lord?" And then it will cause people to come to Him. And so I'm praying that this would bring, it's not just a war that's going to happen. We're looking for a war. Rather, we're looking for the response of the people um, to the events that occur around us and what it is declaring to us in our time.
Yes. Well, save the time. Okay, save the date. We're going to
Okay,
make announcement prior to the live stream. We're going to do live stream so we can have a answer and question. Is it okay, brother?
that sounds good.
Yeah. So January, brothers and sisters. So thank you so much. And please share our channel to be a blessing for many people and to give good information and good teaching for other people, because Jesus is coming and we need to know his time and season, like the time of like the tribe of Issachar, know God's time and season. So God bless you, brothers and sisters, and we wish you have a wonderful and joyful Merry Christmas, spending time with your family, and also have a Happy New Year for
Merry Christmas.
2025. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.